Hey everyone, this is Kevin from Fort Orange Woodworking. I am about to start a very ambitious carving project that I'm really looking forward to. That should be posted relatively soon once I get started on it. However, before I get to that, I need to sharpen my chisels to a razor sharp edge. And this video is going to teach you how to take regular chisels, not super expensive, just purchased off of the internet, and a relatively cheap set of stones to see if we can get decent chisels and average stones to get a high quality finish. So what I'm starting with is let me just push this out of the way. Got some stones soaking. This is a Von House set of chisels that I purchased off of Amazon. Relatively cheap, somewhere around 40 bucks, and I'll show you what's in the kit. In the kit, we've got a set of 6 chisels of different widths. They've got like a rubberized plastic handle, which is pretty comfortable. They have what appears to be a decent quality steel to them. In addition, they've got this carrying case, a two-sided different grit sharpening stone, and this bevel setting chisel guide. This can have a little bit of a learning curve and can be difficult to use, but if you're new to sharpening chisels, it can also really help you to set your bevel, which we'll see later. It keeps you from tipping the chisel up and down as you're sharpening if you're trying to do it just by hand. This stone here, the grits are unmarked. One is coarse and one is more fine. I would just say less coarse, honestly. I have used this as an experiment, but honestly, I don't have a lot of faith in it, so I have my own set of stones, which I'm going to show you those as well. So this is going to be the set of stones that I'm using. I purchased this some time ago, maybe a couple years ago, off of Amazon. These are really inexpensive stones. I'm going to show you the brand of them in a second here, but these are pretty much everywhere on Amazon. These are relatively inexpensive, cheap Chinese stones. They range from 400 to 8,000 with different grits, going down. 2 double-sided stones. I would take these numbers with a serious grain of salt though. So this 400 is not a true 400 bevel setting stone, and this 8,000 certainly is not a high-end 8,000 grit stone. So they do go from low grit to high grit, so we can use them for that purpose. But don't put too much stock into the grit numbers on these because they're simply not accurate. And these are water stones, so I've got them soaking. Also comes with this base, which is rubberized on the bottom, made of bamboo, and it's got these rubber inserts, so you can use them without the stones moving around pretty well. This actually works really well. I really like this base. It's one of the better parts of this whole set, to be honest with you. I do have a set of higher quality stones. You know, something in the $40 to $60 range per stone, and that's probably a significant investment for a lot of people. I use them for sharpening straight razors, but I don't want to use my expensive stones right now on this project and for these chisels, because they can take away a little bit of material from one spot, and I don't want to do that to my good stones because my razors need the whole surface. If you really want a serious upgrade, you can look into getting a 3-stone diamond stone set, which is, I think, going to be one of my next upgrades for stones. It's what Paul Sellers uses to sharpen his chisels and tools, and if you haven't checked out any of Paul Sellers' videos, he's kind of the industry standard on sharpening. So you can check those out, but today we are going to try to get a good razor finish off of budget stones. Let's see how we do. I'm going to start with my 400 stone, and as you can see, I've got some wear marks right in the middle, well, not in the middle, but on the end of this stone. And if I really want to get quality results, I should probably get that down to a more consistent level. Same thing on the 1000 sign. From another project I was working on, I dug some unintentional lines into the stone, and that's no good. So I'm going to use the one DMT stone that I do own, that I picked up from a garage sale actually. This is a coarse DMT diamond stone, and I'm simply going to use this to level my 400 grit stone. The DMT holds up really well over time, and it is a good choice for flattening and ensuring that you have a good consistent surface to begin with. This is going to take me some time because I put a pretty good dent in this stone before, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward and come back when I'm done with this. See you then. Okay, so we're going to get started with the sharpening process. I move my supplies over here to my vise for my bench, and I'm starting with the 4th chisel in the set, the 4th from the most narrow. So this is a 26 millimeter chisel. I have sharpened this before in the past. I don't think I did a great job of it though, so this could definitely use a touch-up. I can see some of the factory marks and some unevenness on the steel already, so that's telling me that this chisel is definitely due for a sharpening, especially since I'm starting a new project, which is going to be kind of important that these are sharp. So keeping my stone wet here. I've got my guide set up so that the bevel is exactly where I want it, so that when the wheel makes contact, it will be right where I need it. So if we're removing metal, we can move back and forth. If we were honing, we would probably just go one direction straight forward, but since we're removing metal, we can go back and forth. And we're letting the stone do the work. We're letting the stone take the metal off. We're not grinding it into the stone. That's how you get significant wear marks. Every once in a while, I'm going to move this a little bit, just so I can ensure that I'm not taking too much stone off as we go. I'm going to do this for a few minutes, and then we'll check our progress on the new bevel. I can see already that some of the steel is getting left behind on the stone, and that's a good thing. That means that it's removing material, and the steel will actually help to remove more metal by being involved in the process. So we'll just leave that on, no need to take that off, and we'll keep going until we think that we've got a decent bevel set here. Okay, so I am moving on to the 1000 grit stone now. It's still wet, so I'm just going to apply a little bit of water to keep it damp. And I'm using an old sharpener's trick where I'm going to take my bevel and I'm going to put some Sharpie on it and see exactly where my grit marks are landing to see how accurate I am. And I'm doing this especially because this time, instead of using the guide, I'm going to try to go freehand and see how close I can get it to a proper bevel. So here we go. 1000 grit. Trying to keep my elbow fixed as much as possible. I'm really just kind of like rocking back and forth on this to try to get this to go as straight as I can along the stone. So far I think I'm doing pretty good. I'll check it out in a minute. I can already start to see steel come off onto the stone. So at least we know that the stone is working. I just don't know about how my technique is going. So we'll check it out, see how we're doing. I'd say not too bad. Not too bad for a beginner. I got a little bit on one side that I need to get to, and maybe that was from my previous bevel, maybe it's for me, but I can see where I need to make my adjustments and continue. If I did the job right with the first stone, this step should be much quicker. It shouldn't take me as long once the bevel is set, because I'm really not so much sharpening as I am kind of honing at this point. Although it is removing a good amount of steel, so a little bit of both, I'd say. Okay, I think we're pretty good at this point, so let's move on to the next highest grit, which is a 3000. Got my bevel marked again, stone's ready to go, got my water nearby, gonna freehand it again and see how we do. Going nice and easy on the first couple of strokes to get a feel for where my bevel wants to fall naturally. Check my marks. Looks pretty good, although I do seem to have a little bit of a trouble spot right here on the top right. I'm going to try to adjust that as I go, but I'm not sure where that problem lies. Maybe that was dug deeper a little earlier. We'll try to sort it out though. So I can tell already that my chisel's starting to get pretty shiny, but I still have quite a bit of red there, which means I need to work on my angle. So maybe I try the honing guide to see if I can fix that mistake as we go. But like I said, this could be an issue with how I set the bevel initially, which would be a problem because we really can't go back at this point. So I can see that because I'm using the honing guide now, I'm creating a new bevel. I really don't want to do that you can see that line there, right there. I really don't want to be doing that at this high of a grit, but it seems to be working and it seems to be taking off a good amount of metal and creating a clean edge. So I'm just going to keep going with it. This is not like an ideal situation, but it seems to be working. It's not taking me a whole lot of time, and hopefully this will give me experience for the next chisel and I won't make this mistake again. But I think this is going to be the easiest way to fix this problem. And you can see all the black that's being left behind on the stone. That's all steel. So that's a good sign that metal's coming off. As long as I keep checking it and seeing that it's coming off evenly, we're doing okay. Like I said, not an ideal situation for sharpening a bevel, but also realistically, I'm going to guess that compared to higher quality stones, this 3000 is probably more similar to a 1000 from a better set. And it seems to be holding up pretty well, so this 3000 seems to be a pretty durable stone. Okay, this is the last stone, but it is not the last step, so I'm just going to take a second here to set my bevel guide, because that seemed to work really well, better than when I tried to do it by hand. And I want to finish on a high note, so let's see if we can get this right. Probably the hardest part of the whole process right here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see, do a couple rough rubs here and see how we start off. It's definitely taking off steel. Let's see how close our guide is to our previous bevel. Okay, looks like that's something I can live with. Let's go with it. Oh, you can definitely see that even at this high grit, it's still taking off quite a bit of steel, which means it's probably not as high grit as we think it is. Let's keep our wear marks even, switch sides. Oh yeah, it's getting pretty sharp. So I can see by the finish on the stone, or on the bevel, where my chisel is hitting the stone. I'm hitting it forward and not back, and that's okay, because that means I can just wear down a little bit more as I go. I don't want to be doing this forever, but I do want to get it right, so I'm going to keep going with this just like I did on the last zone. And it just goes to show that bevel, the bevel guide on the guide itself, it's really important that you get that as accurate as possible, as close as possible to the last one, so you don't have to create a new bevel every time. This should be pretty close though, so keep going. Okay, so after about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, I feel like I'm just about done with this chisel. I have one more step. I need to get out some buffing compound and strop this, which will only take a second. And I'm going to do that next. I'll show you. However, hopefully you're watching these videos because you're learning from them by watching me make mistakes. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with making the mistakes so that you can learn. When I went from the guide to freehand back to the guide, I lost the bevel that I had created. So I actually went back, all the way back down to 400 and started from scratch to get a new bevel, and I kept the guide on in the same spot all the way through. And for me as a beginner, I think that was the trick. So I kept it at 400, worked my way back up, and honestly it only took me about 10 minutes to get all the way through again. So what I've got here, it's a little hard to tell, a little hard to see, is my somewhat finished edge there, and I know there's a lot of reflection, you can't really get a good grip on it. There's a little bit of dullness in there still from the stone marks. It's not super shiny yet, but I think with stropping, this is going to come out really shiny, razor finish. I'm going to work on the back, and then this thing will be ready to go. All right, so let's work on the back, then we'll strop, and then we'll put a double bevel on, and this thing will be super razor sharp. All right, here we go.